There are less than 3 weeks until Election Day, and several Democrats are now accusing Republicans of voter suppression. Here is voting rights advocate and the loser of the 2018 gubernatorial race in Georgia calling out Republicans for voter suppression, specifically when it comes to early voting.
But we know across the country, early voting is going to become the next front in the war against voters.
Have you ever heard of the war against voters before? Well, it's apparently a thing. Former Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill tweeted out this video and wrote, quote, "This is a picture of voter suppression. Why do Americans have to wait in lines this long?" This is a line in Sewanee, Georgia, of people trying to vote on the first day of early voting. That's in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Here's also a headline from the USA Today. As Arizona, Texas, and Georgia become less white, voter suppression could keep these states from turning blue. A columnist for the Boston Globe writing this, quote, "Voter suppression is democracy bleeding out." Following that with this, Trump and the GOP aren't content with making it harder to vote. They want to make it impossible. But here's the rest of the story and some context thanks to Dave Wasserman, who's with the nonpartisan Cook Political Report. He also works for NBC News. He warned McCaskill about jumping to conclusions. He said Gwinnett County, Georgia has in fact 9 advanced voting centers. They are open 9 to 12 hours a day, including weekends between October the 12th and October 30th. This is the first day of in-person voting and the highest enthusiasm election in Georgia history. So, Senator McCaskill, let's just give it a few days before jumping to conclusions, I should say. Now, on Tuesday, Virginia's online voter registration system was down for several hours by an accidental severed fiber optic cable, and this caused people to freak out. The accident could not have come at a worse time, as it was the last day to register before the 2020 election. 6 hours later, the Virginia Department of Elections tweeted saying that the portal was back up and running and people were able to register again. At a press conference yesterday, Governor Ralph Northam said that he supports extending the deadline, but only the courts have the ability to do so. This morning, a judge in Virginia did extend the voter registration by 48 hours. So, again, no voter suppression to report here. This is a Democrat, too, the governor there. All right, the vice president for the Lawyers Democracy Fund, Tom Spencer, joins us now to talk more about this. Tom, great to see you.
Great to be there.
All right, always a pleasure to talk to you. And, you know, you worked on the front lines of the Bush v. Gore case and the vote counting down in Florida in the 2000 recount. A lot of people don't realize this, but we have these recounts all the time, especially in Palm Beach County. I remember in 2008, there was a hotly contested judges race there that went through several rounds of a recount. But I digress. We are hearing these claims of voter suppression now from people like Stacey Abrams. Are they fair to make these claims?
No, it's not fair. It's a dog whistle for political purposes. They normally claim voter suppression when the election gets close and they feel like they're going to lose. And it's to generate support within their ranks. But there's no evidence or facts to support voter suppression based upon the facts that we now have, people waiting in line. This is the election of a lifetime. It's the most important election in my lifetime, and I've been around for a while. So people are getting out to vote, and there are initially going to be long lines. And then there are a lot of people who wait for the last minute for everything, and at the last minute, there are going to be long lines. So our advice to voters is get your vote in.
Now, the interesting thing, too, there's no qualifier from Claire McCaskill, again, a former sitting U.S. senator, talking about these long lines, never mentioned the fact that the people in the video clearly social distancing, so they're, obviously farther apart than they normally would be, also explaining the line. But I wanted to talk about this. We just discussed this in the previous hour with Colonel Allen West, the Texas GOP chairman. There's a lawsuit in Texas right now about curbside voting versus mail-in voting in Harris County, in Houston, the most populous county in the state of Texas. They opened 10 drive-through voting sites. The Secretary of State saying this is available to anyone. Curbside voting is only supposed to be available for people who are seriously ill or handicapped. So what do you think happens with this lawsuit, Tom?
I think they're going to win because Harris County election officials always seem to go off on an adventure of their own, irregardless of what the election law says. And this is another situation where they're doing it again. And I think that the Republicans who have filed suit are going to win because what's going to happen in Harris County is not going to happen somewhere else. and other people are going to say that it's unfair.
Well,
it should be on a statewide basis.
Colonel West told us the judge has rejected the case on its face. They are going to appeal that, but the other question I had for them, maybe you have better insight on this, Tom, is this is just one of many lawsuits I would imagine that are going to last past Election Day, and there are going to be thousands maybe of lawsuits like this one that are going to have to be decided before we actually know who wins the election.
Well, not precisely. There will be a number of them, and there are a number of them. There are 145 nationwide. But the law is that all election disputes regarding the outcome of the election must be decided under the law by December the 8th. That's the law. And the Electoral College then has to meet by December the 13th, and the electoral votes have to be in the House of Representatives by January the 6th. So a lot of these lawsuits are interesting, but they're going to have to be decided and determined.
Well, that's why we have lawyers, and to educate lay people like myself on these things. I had not heard about that specifically. I do know there are some provisions in case the election is not settled by January 20th. What happens? There's a vote in the House of Representatives, things like that. But we can have those discussions in more detail, perhaps at a later date. But Tom, thanks so much for updating us on these two cases. We appreciate your insight, and we will check in with you, of course, as we get closer to Election Day. Thanks so much.
Newsmax TV is now America's fastest growing cable news channel. We give you the real news you need. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. If you like this video, share it with your friends. Newsmax TV streams live on YouTube for free. Newsmax TV, real news for real people.